Hello, everybody, and welcome to the show. This is TFT, of course. We're going to be talking about anti-vaxxers and anti-vaccination in general. Very happy to have you guys here today, and it's going to be interesting. I'll give it a moment before I really get into the topic, but of course, I want to come over here and say hello to our guests that we have on the panel, and of course, to remind you guys, please take some time to take a look at our links down below and get involved in the things we're doing. Also, of course, being live streamers, the thing that helps us the most is hit that share button, and we really appreciate it when you guys do that. But before we get in, let's take a little bit of a warm up because, whoo, this is a heavy one today. And actually, I will give a little bit of a disclaimer in the beginning of this for any of those bots that are listening. Uh, I well aware this is a serious topic. It's probably the most serious thing we've talked about. 9/11, of course, is very serious. A lot of people died, but then it's happened. It's from the past. It's something that is done. This is not, and of course. But nevertheless, let me come over here and say hello to the George. How you doing, George?
Okie dokie. How are you?
I'm really good, and rumor has it that you have a prepared statement.
I do. I
Mm.
do. As soon as as soon as you talk to Booster and get the pleasantries out of the way, I will get all my sheets of paper ready.
Oh, goody, he has it written down. Oh, no.
The world we have to live in today.
Yeah.
But hey, doing Booster, what's up?
Yeah, I'm great. I'm great, in fact. I can't help but notice you addressed George first, but fine. That's cool. I don't mind.
It's well because of no reason. I do apologize. I made a
Hmm.
horrible mistake. What am I
And my
thinking?
statement would be if vaccinations are so bad, then why did I turn out so fantastic?
There it is. And of course, that is our
Boom.
amazing pie
Science nerd.
expert from Hobbiton, and we're always happy
Hmm.
to have him in here. And of course, he's never in TFT, so feel blessed, ladies and gentlemen. Feel blessed.
I've
Yeah.
blessed you with my presence.
Yes.
But I did no research, but here I am going to be making the case for anti-vaccination. Here we go, baby.
Sweet, there you go. But also, before we get into it today, I did want to mention one little fun thing before we get into this rather serious topic. And I'll come over and look at the chat here in a moment as well. But did you guys watch the Wonder Woman trailer?
I did. Yes, yes.
Ooh, it's
I could work with it.
really no,
It could be.
it looks really
You
bad,
think
dude.
it looks really bad? You think everything
Mm,
looks bad? You're
no,
so
I don't.
pessimistic.
That's not true. That's not true at all.
I think it looks fine. Although the woman they got to play Cheetah is a ridiculous choice, but
It looks way too glam. The my wife actually made the same statement as what came in my head. You remember that the Guardians of the Galaxy? I think it was the second one. And
mm,
James Gunn came out with that 70s spoof music video for it with David Hasselhoff singing and stuff,
yeah,
and everyone was dancing. It was absolutely epic. It was great, right? It was funny, and of course, it was supposed to be funny. That
yes,
trailer and the setting it's in, it looks like it should be funny, and we know it won't be. That's the problem that's coming off to me
I
automatically. Yeah.
did not get that at all.
I did. I was like, wow. And I watched the original Wonder Woman. It's certainly watchable. It's not a great movie, but it's fine. It's fine
Hmm.
popcorn flick. So it's a bit disappointing. I was hoping they would up the game, but it could be good. It's just a bad trailer. But no, I don't hate all trailers. What are you talking about? I just watched the Black Widow trailer and I love that.
Sure thing, Chester.
Yeah.
Sure thing, Chester.
Well, let me see if the chat has anything to say before we get into it. And yes, I am delaying because I don't want to do it, but I'm doing it. Roger Heller
Do it,
says,
do it.
right on another amazing GFT. Nice to have you here, Roger. Of course, we also have Curious 2A. Aloha, autistic people. Well, aloha to you too. Rodwell Stevens says howdy, or Steffens. I think it's Stevens. My pickles. I love my pickles. I'm an asthma nerd that had to have loads of vaccinations. Oh, well, sorry for that, dude.
Mhm.
Unconicate because you lucked out. All right. I have minor learning disabilities, only minor, and memory problems to this day due to, excuse me, back
Stop dying,
vaccine
Chester.
given to me in the 80s. You
Should have
know
had your vaccines,
I
Chester. You
know,
wouldn't have that
I know.
cough.
That's going to
Yeah.
happen a lot. You know what they said when they pulled the vax? Oops. they buried it. Wow, that came out backwards a little bit too. That's all right. I get you. Jennifer H is in here as well, and I know we're going to have a lot of those kind of conversations today, and that's cool. And we're going to try to get to the bottom of what's going on here, this conversation, which is the intention. Like I said, today is a little bit more serious than what we normally do. I mean, TFT is about having fun, kind of goofing on conspiracy theories, and some of them we probably think are more interesting than others, and some of them we think that are more viable than others. But this one is serious business, and so I'm gonna try to give the respect it's due. As best I can. Of course, I do have George to my right and Booster to my left, so good luck with that, I would say. But once again,
Mhm.
hopefully you guys will hit that share button and let people know because we're live streamers. We'd rather have people here with us on this. What is it? Saturday night, Sunday morning? What is the time here? I think it's Saturday night
It's a Monday over here.
for us. I think it's
For us, it'll
Sunday.
be a Sunday night for them, Chester.
Is it
And
Sunday
on the
night?
EST, it would be Sunday at 10 p.m. EST.
No, it's Sunday morning. That's what it is. Sunday morning.
No, 8
No.
p.m. New York right now.
So it's Saturday then.
No, it's Sunday, Chester.
Damn
I'm
it.
looking at my damn clock thing, man.
Okay, fine. But anyway, let's get into this. Deep breath. All right. George, your statement. I do apologize. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you, thank you. I have 3 announcements to make.
Mhm.
First announcement: the red zone is for loading and unloading. The white zone is for
Oh,
walking. Okay. Second statement: vaccines are safe. Signed, the pharmaceutical companies. Third statement:
Third statement. Yeah.
uh, can you please go to the white courtesy phone, Mr. Clinton Dipkilstein?
Oh.
Mr. Clinton Dipkilstein, white courtesy phone.
oh dear.
At fourth.
No, that's it.
He said 3. He said
Just
3
look
statements, Chester.
All right, fine.
Listen.
Uh, God, the world I have to deal with. All right, here we go. Moving on. I'm allowing it, and then I'm going to do this. Okay. Um, Now, here's the first thing let me just start off with it. Here's the thing: if you are an anti-vaxxer, you will you receive nothing but hate and arrogance on the internet. That's it. That's the end of it. This is what you're going to get if you're an anti-vaxxer. This, and this. Even SpongeBob hates you, right?
Mhm.
And it's very interesting to me because when I went to start doing the research for this, I've been kind of paying attention to it over the years. I didn't really give it too much mind, to be honest with you. But when I went to go research this, go on the internet and try. It's particularly like YouTube, and try to find the positive anti-vaxxer position. Go for it. Have fun. Because all you see is anti-vaxxer debunked. That's it. And the couple of videos I could find for people who were promoting anti-vaccination were a couple of idiotic, stupid hippies. And I'm pretty sure they were left up there intentionally because they helped the argument against anti-vaxxers. So there's a full court press against you if you're an anti-vaxxer. All the social media, anyone who's slightly liberal, you are the biggest monster on the planet. This is an interesting response because it's an extreme response, and I guess the reason why that some people would say that it's extreme is because if you don't vaccinate your children, well, then you're potentially opening up to diseases returning. Now, I guess I kind of understand that argument, but at the same time, the only disease that's going to hit is to those who were anti-vaxxed, right? Because vaccinations are the beginning and the end. They're the most amazing, the alpha and the omega. They're the most amazing thing ever. Of course, this isn't even true. And this is part of the argument that no one ever brings up, it seems to me, when they're going and chasing after these anti-vaxxers, is the fact that these vaccinations we have will range anywhere from 69% to about 95, 97% viable. Now, that doesn't make much sense to me. I mean, if it's supposed to be a vaccination by definition, isn't it supposed to be 100%? But it's not, and a lot of them are actually you're like I said, 69 to 95% viable, meaning you might just get it anyway. So that's an issue unto itself. The other problem we're getting, that's the argument from the anti-vaxxers point of view, is that we don't understand these drugs well enough. They give way too many drugs at one time, and you're forcing me to do it, right? And I think that last point is one of the big ones that doesn't get covered enough, because some people take it from the point of view that it's personal freedom. I have the liberty. Texas, of course, seems to be a big one on that. But yet, sometimes you have to think about the other people around you, I suppose. But once again, if you have a vaccination, then you should be fine, right? But of course, we know you're not. So this is a very sticky wicket with this conversation. And the anti vaxxers and their opinions are completely thrown out by media. So they don't really have much of a voice, to be honest with you. And it's more of a grassroots type of thing. But then again, we're seeing a lot of that these days, aren't we? A lot of these grassroots movements are dealing because media is 100% against most anything that is conservative in thinking. And I'm not talking political, I'm just talking about lifestyle, right? And this comes down to it. Now, for me personally, though, I think the anti vaccination thing is the tip of an iceberg of a much bigger problem, right? Because if you go online and you look at a lot of these anti vaxxer things and attacking them, what you see are these incredibly arrogant doctors. They come off horribly. Just go watch some videos. Just go on YouTube or any place else you can find them, and just go look at a couple of these. If there's only a few minutes. Everything these days is a few minutes video, but go watch these doctors. It's irritating how arrogant they come out, and they basically just calling you an idiot without using the word, and this doesn't help. People don't like being talked down to. And you would think they would learn a little tactics and a little diplomacy. It's a lot more effective to use honey, right, than the big, gigantic fly swatter stick, right? But that's what we're seeing going on. Now, I personally, when looking at this argument, they're talking about mercury and they're talking about problems in the medicines and yada, yada, yada. Now, uh, first of all, there can be mistakes. You can become injured from getting a vaccination. This is true. It's a super, super low percentage. To the point that they didn't want to talk about it, but it can happen. It's just extremely rare. And of course, one of the other problems that comes up is people talk about big pharma. Now, for me, this is where the conversation really begins. Because if we look at this medicine issue that's going on, I think it's much bigger than anti vaccinations. I think it's much more important than anti vaccinations because big pharma is a thing, right? There are a lot of these companies that make ridiculous amounts of money. I mean, just insane amount of money, and they are legislated by the government. Of course, a lot of these politicians make a lot of money off these companies, and we've had conversations in this country and every country in the world about this kind of payments. And do keep in mind, for a company to come and pay a senator or a congressman or whatever other type of public person is completely legal. Now, you would think it would be illegal. It makes sense, right? Your brain says, no, you can't do that. It must be illegal. No, it's legal because they made it legal, right? And this is where the problem really comes in, I think, because the pharmaceutical industry does not create cures, it creates customers. And this is a very truthful statement. It's a very truthful statement. They do not want to heal you at all. They want you to be a lifelong customer. And this is a problem because it brings up a lot of accusations that the pharmaceutical companies are hiding cures for things because they don't want to give you the cure. They want to give you the medicine, the maintenance is what they want you to be on. But it goes a lot deeper than that. And this is where I think the conversation is really digging into, is right here. It's with children. Of course, anti-vaccination has a lot to do with your children, protecting them, and the fact that they'll give them so many injections at the same time. And I don't think that's good. I mean, Donald Trump, people say, oh, he's an anti-vaxxer. He's an anti-vaxxer. Well, is he? Nah, not really. He's basically saying, well, one, maybe we shouldn't be pumping 50 shots into one kid at the same time. Maybe we should, kind of work it out over time, right? Is basically what he's saying. He's not saying that it's going to kill you. He's just saying that maybe be a little bit more responsible and a little bit more forthcoming about what's in those things, because it's not 100% perfect. It's not. No matter what doctor tries to tell you this, there is a slight danger. It's just very rare. But then again, rare is still something, right? But here's the real problem as far as I'm concerned. They are basically uh, making money. These, I'm talking like all the way down to like school nurses at your children's schools. They're getting paid money to push drugs on your kids. Now we know the boys are getting hit a lot harder than the girls, because if a boy gets up and he starts running around, or he says something, duty or whatever, this kid is a major threat to society. Put him on drugs. And of course, the reason why these nurses and psychologists and all these other people are throwing all these drugs on the kids isn't because they actually think they're going to be helping these children. It's because they're being paid money from Big Pharma. That's not a lie. That is not a conspiracy theory. That is straight up truth. Right. And that's a problem. And it comes back to the Vaxxer thing, in the fact that, a lot of these doctors who are putting certain vaccinations from certain companies in there are getting paid from those companies. Now, does that mean that the vaccination isn't good? Of course not. But it does bring up questions in people's minds, especially when doctors don't want to divulge that information. And they think it's insulting. How dare you ask me? Well, why? Well, a lawyer has to show his conflict of interest. Politicians have to, even though they're allowed to do a lot of crazy things, they have to have some accountability. Why shouldn't a doctor have one? But they can't stand it unless you dare ask them where they're getting their money from. And this makes people suspicious. And I think a lot of the anti-vaxxer thing is coming out of people being suspicious. And when you take places like Facebook, Twitter, even Instagram, right? Google itself, YouTube, and they do everything they can to hide any information from the anti-vaxxers and just simply put up things that are debunking them. It makes it worse. It's about perception. People think that they're being cheated because it gets worse and worse as far as the application. Now, there was an article that came up with the MMR, I think it was called, but it's a certain type of vaccination. And there was a report from a doctor, and he was talking about links to autism, and it kind of kicked this thing off. Right, and it was found that he lied, and it was a bunch of, and it got retracted and such. So it was built on a lie, just kind of like the continent-sized plastic island that's in the South Pacific, which doesn't exist, and all those other things that come from lies, like the global warming thing. That guy who said that 97% of all scientists, well, he sent it out to a small group of scientists, none of them actually weather scientists, by the way, and only a few responded. And of the few who responded, 97% of them agreed with him. Right? So it's not 97% of all scientists, it's 97% of the small group to who he responded to. It's the same kind of nonsense, right? It gets built on this kind of stuff. And I think that's what's kind of led us to this current situation. There's been a lot of worry, and do you blame parents? They're not doctors. They have their own careers. They have their own responsibilities. You want to trust in these kind of people that they're doing a good job. But when they refuse to answer questions, when they treat you like an idiot, when they talk down to you, it just makes the things worse and worse and worse. And this, I think, is the real problem with anti-vaccine, because when it comes right down to it, when you look at the actual science, you should get your kids vaccinated. You should, because the percentage of chance of your kids having any problem from it is extremely low. Extremely low. And you say, well, any percent is bad. Well, yeah, but then on the other hand, if you don't have vaccination, you could run into problems. And let me give you a personal example. And this is from my life, right? Not somebody else's. I had a friend of mine. He got married young. much younger than I did, and he and his wife had a new baby coming right along, as you do, and they're very happy, very excited. Beautiful little baby, is a nice little family. Well, one of her kids, one of her friends' kids, had chicken pox. I think it was chicken pox. I don't think it was measles. I think it was chicken pox. And so she and the other her other friends went to a chicken pox party. I know that sounds ridiculous, but people do this. Well, women do this. They take their children to places where a kid has a measles, mumps, chickenpox, or whatever, because they think they're going to get him in there, get it over and done with. Well, here's the problem. That chickenpox got into the throat of the child and killed it, right? This is not non-lethal. Now, that's a very rare situation, of course, but it can happen. And I guess it comes down to this: life happens. Bad things happen. Nothing's 100%, nothing's guaranteed, but in the end, vaccinating your children is really better for them. There is not a lot of these things about germs and these diseases put in there. Well, your kids get more access to more diseases just running around the playground than they will from all the vaccinations they take in their life. The kind of mercury things, it's not the kind of mercury you think it is, right? It actually evaporates out of the skin quite well, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not going to cover every point, but vaccinations in general are extremely safe and they're essential for the health of your child. But I understand why it's gotten to this point. I get it. I get it. And, one of the things that keeps progressing this forward, other than the arrogance and the hate and the just undiplomatic approach to things, is this celebrity. Celebrity joining in, right? Here's Jim Carrey, which I think he's an absolute wacko, but, that's what makes him funny. But $1 trillion buys a lot of expert opinions. Will it buy you? Toxic free vaccinations is reasonable quest. Well, I agree it is.
For $1 trillion, I'd say just about anything, if I'm honest with you.
Yeah. But I mean, but
Uh,
see, I don't disagree with that. I think the medicine should be as clean as possible. The question comes down to it: is it actually toxic laden? And we could have an argument about that. But
if I stop you there, right, isn't the point of a vaccination supposed to be that it is a mildly bit toxin so that it allows your body to immunize itself against the toxin?
in a way, but
So you can't technically have a toxin-free vaccine, can you?
no, you can't. But do keep in mind that most of the aspects of the disease that are in the vaccination are not the type that would give you the disease. Actually, people
Mm-hmm.
misunderstand that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I get your point, and I get his point, and I get everybody's point. But I will make this last statement before I come over here and we start talking about it, because this is just my primer. I'm trying to lay out here what the conversation is
My
about,
boy,
right?
I'll stay quiet.
Oh, no,
Shh.
no. I just got one last comment here. Um, Ever since vaccination was created by, I think his name was Lieber, a few centuries back, um, ever since then, there has been anti-vaxxers. This is nothing new. It happened. As a matter of fact, he was incredibly, the dude who created vaccination was incredibly shunned in his town. He was ridiculed and treated horribly. This is not a new thing. People are scared about disease, as they should be, right? And the idea of giving a disease to a child to keep them from getting the disease, it's baffling. It's anti-logical for most people. They don't get it. It's reverse of what you would think. And of course, if you take time to look at it, you understand it's not exactly what you think it is. But this has been people have been against this since the beginning of it. Right. And I know some of you got to be dropping in the chat before I even look. Actually, they did anti-vaccination in China. Well, you know what? They did it in ancient India and ancient Egypt too, right? But the modern use of it and the widespread use of it, more importantly, global use of it, is modern. It's just like everything else where people want to get up and say, well, there's this example in the past. Yeah, well, they didn't make nothing of it. Just like Columbus. We know so many people came to the New World. Yeah, sure they did. But Columbus and the Spanish crown made something of it, good or bad, right? So that, whatever with that argument. But yeah, I think I've covered it. I probably didn't cover every little thought I wanted to say, but good enough. Booster.
Oh, Manchester, that was wild, bro.
Where's George?
George ran away. He made his statements, and he left after he made his statements.
Did he?
So I think you saw.
Well, anyway, so what do you think about everything I put out there, Booster?
I think that's wild, Chester.
That's not helping me at all, dude.
Yeah, I don't know how to tell you. I can't really saying if it's wrong, right? I'm not smart enough for that. I didn't do any research. It all makes sense to me. It's like, oh man. Also, but I also don't think that vaccines have. I don't know. Have we found correlation between vaccine and autism? Is there any of that?
No, there is no correlation at all, actually. Yeah.
There's none at all. Then why are we against vaccinations again?
Well, because I try to lay it out. I think it's perspective. I mean, these people who if you say you're afraid of vaccinating your child, instead of trying to understand and sympathize with your opinion and trying to have a conversation with you, they say you idiot, and they're arrogant and they look down on them, and it's just not how you interact with people. It's not how you deal with people, right? But these doctors and the such, they're like, you're going to murder the planet. Well, no, they're not. If you have a group of measles, for instance, which we've seen an uptick recently in America, if you get a measles outbreak, which we had one in Disneyland not too long ago, then what happens is all the kids around who were not vaccinated will get the measles, maybe, right? And then of those kids, probably none of them will die. They could be the worst case scenario. Maybe one does, but that's
I
it.
don't want your ratty little anti-vax kids near me. I don't want them near me.
Yeah, but I'm just saying that if you are vaccinated, what's the problem? Now, I did cover the fact that these vaccinations are not 100% foolproof, I guess. So I did cover that. But if you are vaccinated, what's your worry? It's the kids that aren't vaccinated, and
because they're gross and snotty. I don't want kids around me anyway. To be honest, I kind of hate children.
That's true.
So that was a redundant statement from me.
Yeah, I get you. But for me, the measles and chickenpox, which can be deadly, are less troublesome in my opinion. But something like polio coming back, that's serious. Now that's serious, right?
Model 316 seems to have a problem with you saying there's no correlation between autism and vaccinations.
Well, I wish you'd come on here and tell me, dude, because I gave you a link, dude. Yep. Because as far as my research
goes,
more
on this than I do.
Well, but as far as my understand, finding the both sides of the opinion in this argument was impossible. It's impossible.
It's very hard. I'm using DuckDuckGo and I can barely find anything on this.
Yeah, because the internet has. If you are an anti-vaxxer, the internet is against you. You have been censored. Plain and simple. You have been censored. And finding the other side is very hard. All I can find is information that shows that there is literally zero evidence connecting any vaccination to autism at all. Right? And I would maybe, and if you have that information, please jump in here and give it to us. But I also, well, I've also found that a lot of the autism problems, it's really, for me, we have to kind of ask the question, what is autism? Because it seems to be far more broadly defined these days.
That's an interesting conversation. Talking about mental diagnosis on children, that's an interesting conversation.
It is. And understand that if they have any kind of little angst or any little normal kid acting stuff, particularly boys, they throw them on drugs. That's why I mentioned that other aspect of it, because I think that's more of what's going on than the actual vaccination stuff. They are medicating your children for profit.
It's almost like you can't just have them sitting still for 6 hours a day staring at a blackboard, huh?
Right. Yeah, right.
Because they'll get fidgety, and there's little bundles of energy there. And, I was diagnosed with Asperger's when I was much younger. You know that?
Well, you are an ass.
Well, yeah. I didn't need a professional diagnosis to tell me I'm an ass. I already knew that.
True.
No, seriously. Do I come off as a Asper to you? Do I come off as an autistic person?
Not even a little. Not even a little.
No. Well, that's what I was diagnosed with the Asperger's.
Yeah, but see, they diagnosed with all kind of stuff. Let me tell you a little bit of something about mental health and doctors and diagnoses. First of all, we all know that mental illness is a real thing. Of course, we know it's real. We've seen plenty of people with it, right? But
Yeah,
here's the
especially in the comic
real.
community.
Oh, yes, absolutely. But
Absolutely attracts
yeah,
autists. Eh?
but here's the real problem with the mental illness diagnosis. They don't know nothing. They don't know anything. Actually, if you go look at the actual science on mental illness, technically, as far as the medical field is concerned, there is zero evidence that mental illness exists at all. That's the reality of science. Look at it. But we all know it's real. We've all
Yeah,
seen
yeah,
it, right? We
yeah.
know mental illness is real. But as far as science is concerned, they have no evidence that it exists. So that
That's
shows you how
crazy.
far behind they are in understanding anything about it. So it's an issue, and I know that there are people who are really sick and need help, and there's plenty of other people who get diagnosed simply for the profit of it. And this is a real problem, right? Now, Model came in here, and I'm going to turn the floor over to him in a second. But I want to go through the chat real quick and try to catch up here. Um, let's see. I read that. Oops. Now, wow, they came out backwards. Yes, it's Sunday night. Oh, thank you, Roger. Mind the gap. All right. Big pharma and big profits. Vaccine reached $55 billion worldwide in 2015. Yeah, dude. Yeah, dude. Google eliminated it about 2012. They're hardcore on it still, dude, because I saw plenty of anti-vaxxer stuff within the past few months, but nothing from the other side of the argument. So that's a problem. Yeah, it's a problem. Uncanny's really it feels connected to this, so I wish he'd come on. Let me see. Since early on, there are millions of published doctors that are anti-vaxxers. Yeah, they don't publish anymore. Yeah, no, I know that, but I don't have any of their information, and hopefully Model does. And like Booster said, he didn't react to it, but I did. You've come across the term "one size fits all." Now that right there could be a fair point too. That could be a fair point too. They came out with that. It was like a sleeping drug. I can't remember the name of it, but it came out, and the dose was really more applied, to the general body. But it was such a sensitive sleeping drug that if you were smaller, like say a woman, for instance, or a smaller woman, it would have a stronger effect on you. Now, to be fair, to continue that argument, a lot of times the actual examples of that of people having car accidents and stuff on that sleeping drug was because they took a handful of them. So let's not take that out of the argument either. Let me see here. Chester, you're my new hero. I love you too, Kodiak. It was.
Oh,
It was an infant. An infant can't have the vaccine either until they are a certain age. Oh, that's true. That's a fair point. There are age restrictions on certain vaccinations. Yep.
mhm.
Alpha Proto says, "Oi, I hate having the chicken pox and the measles. I got them from my brother back to back in 1 month. Dude, so did I. We all did. And that's just the thing. It isn't the fact that because they keep measles, the dreaded death of the world. No, no. That you can die from them, but it's extremely rare. I gave you an example from my personal life of someone dying from chickenpox. But that kid was too young, was the problem, I think. But the simple fact of the matter, it's not the measles that are issue, even though people keep focusing on that. It's things like polio that actually could be a problem, right? Let me see here. Don't forget Robert Kennedy Jr. Yeah, no, I saw his conversations actually. Alfred Proto says, I would have rather been vaxxed instead of going through those sicknesses. I have scars from it. Well, that's true. We kind of all do. This is a lie. All right. Booster, shut up. You're lying. Uh,
Apparently, it was you saying there's no correlation between the uh, autism and the vaccinations. Apparently,
That
that's a
I could
lie.
find.
You
That
said
I
it.
could find. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think the argument. I don't know. Model's going to help us here in a minute. I'm going to try to get through this chat as quick as I
Mm-hmm.
can. But I
I did
think
zero research models, so
we know
thank you
you
for
did,
coming in.
sir. Research. You
I don't
can't.
like researching.
You don't even research to try to find your dot of a penis. That's a problem. What am I
Hey,
talking about?
I have I have no trouble finding my dot of a penis. I'll let you
We
know.
found it. The fever
Tweezers
that
are
is.
handy.
The fever that is caused by the vaccine causes damage to the brain. Well, that's a fair point. Now, that's not the actual vaccination itself, as far as the disease that's in it. That's a side effect thing, which is a fair point. And once again, models go to get at it because they Chester, Chester, Chester. And why are all these things all of a sudden being hid? Don't do that. I hate that, man. YouTube, you know, you can't, if you guys try to type in the name of the whistleblower, this supposed whistleblower, into the chat, it won't let you put it through. You know that? It's bastards. You know
That
that.
Oh, that's
Carmella guy.
ridiculous. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks for getting the stream destroyed.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, now you got to get your Encyclopedia Britannica tag.
Apparently, fear causes brain damage. It most certainly can, dude. Let me see here. I really need to catch up with this. Hold on a second. Here we go. Okay, I found it again because it popped on me. Curious 2A says, worked with a girl who got the swine flu vaccine. Okay, then got swine flu. You're not supposed to, but it seems to happen, which brings up a whole nother conversation, doesn't it? She came to work sick for a week. She was the only one who got the shot and the only one who got it. Okay, there you go. Damn it. Apparently, fever causes brain damage. I already read that. It can. I wear polos sometimes. Polio, Alpha Proto. Raythul says measles is hell bad in adults. Actually, in an adult, it can most certainly kill you. It's far more deadly to an adult than a kid, actually. They have a nice shirt. I don't know what that means. Jenny McCarthy is an anti-vaxxer. I don't even know who Jenny McCarthy is. She dated Jim Carrey. Oh yeah, no, we Booster told me that. And we have, for some reason, these are being held for review. Asperger's sounds gross, so I'm going to show it. It's been showed. And
Love some
Booster
Asperger's.
wants Asperger's. Yes, he does want Asperger's. Okay, I showed them. Maria Shriver, anti-vaxxer. Okay. RFKJR, anti-vaxxer. The number one expert to ask about vaccines and germs is Dr. Mario. He will cure you right now. That is awesome, Roger. Thank you.
That's awesome. I hope he can cure my autism.
And I'm caught up. So, model, please speak for a while.
Chester, you made an outrageous statement, and I think you did it to get me to click that Hangouts link because I've got the flu, and I've been laying low and sitting in a dark house.
Well,
you said that there's absolutely zero evidence that there's a link between vaccines and autism, and that is so.
You didn't
false.
finish my quote that I could find.
Bait, sit, trap.
You do realize that Thundero says, I am the master of sideways shade. That comes with many talents and skills, you know.
Now, this is a section of medicine and academia that is comparable to a lot of these other ones, where if you are not on the right side, your papers don't get published.
Yeah.
You don't get grants for research. You don't get tenure if you're a professor.
Yeah.
Or you don't get put on any of these medical boards. You don't get put in journals. And there are lots and lots and lots of and even there's, you remember that string of all these homeopathic doctors that all got Clinton cited.
Yeah, killed.
They got
killed.
Arkin cited
the
for
word.
whatever.
Killed.
Yeah, for whatever reason.
Yeah, I
and
remember.
let me show you something here. I put in Google. I put the case for anti-vaccinations. That was my search string. And this whole first page, the anti-vaccination movement, vaccine myths debunked, 6 common misconceptions about immunity. That's all you get.
That's right.
Google has strained out anything. Every single one of these is about how you're stupid. Even the Wikipedia article is vaccine. It's called vaccine hesitancy.
Yes, I know that. I said that.
Information has been completely pulled out.
Yeah,
it's been wiped out. Now
I can't even find that on a DuckDuckGo when I search the same thing.
Yeah.
I get very similar results, and DuckDuckGo is supposed to be better for this kind of thing.
Now, one thing that you said that was right on target in the beginning. If you want to vaccinate your kid, go for it. Then if someone else's kid gets that and comes around, your kid's going to be safe, right?
Right.
Now, the whole idea behind these vaccines is that they're created from strains, particular strains. And even when you talk about the flu vaccines and stuff, seasonal flu, they're guessing on what they think is going to be the predominant strains. of flus for these vaccines. So it's not like you can take a flu vaccine and you'll be safe from the flu. It has to be a particular strain. So sometimes they're putting multiple strains, or they're just guessing based on the previous season. And in the case of these infant vaccinations, they're hitting these kids with a dozen or more viral strains at the same time for different vaccinations.
I've heard as many as 50.
Well, yeah, and I don't know if that they do 50 all at once, but they do like these bursts. You know, they'll go and they'll have to get their dip tet and their measles and rubella and all that stuff like that, and they kind of space these things out. But you're introducing into a human being that has not built any immune system or any flora in their intestines, and you're hitting them with multiple strains of potentially deadly viruses. Now, and you're right, in most cases, there's not a bad result. But
Yeah.
what other thing is the government threatening you that you have to put inside your body? It's outrageous.
Yeah, no, it is, and I agree, and I do apologize, model, but I was left with booster. What do you want me to do, right?
It's pretty brutal.
It's pretty brutal.
I didn't want to leave him alone.
Yeah, thank you.
Can you imagine? Can you imagine if the United States government said you have to play Russian roulette? Now there's 100 chambers and only one bullet, so it's not very likely you're gonna. No one would play.
You know, the comparison they use to debunk that thought is, well, you have to wear your seatbelt, right?
Well, you shouldn't be forced by the government to wear your seatbelt. That's a whole different argument. It's ridiculous.
Well, it's the same thing with drugs in general. Why
Sure,
should the
yeah.
government be mandating what you do with your own damn body? But
If everyone was a constitutional Republican, this world wouldn't be such a mess.
Yep, no, I agree. But you want to see me piss the entire internet off with a single sentence? You want to see it? Want to see it?
Sure.
One
Jeffrey
of the
Epstein
things.
definitely killed himself.
Oh, he definitely killed himself, but that's not controversial. Here's my statement, and I think this applies incredibly. A lot of this problem we're seeing with these vaccination issues, we've seen an uptick. There's an uptick than there was when I was younger, for sure, right? And it's not like we're not getting, we didn't get a bunch of vaccinations when we were kids. Matter of fact, I got a scar on my arm that proves it, right? But here's the thing: we're getting a big uptick, and you know why I think it is? I think because you're getting far less women who are actually breastfeeding.
Well, that's possible too, but I also think the quality of the vaccinations that we received as children is not the same.
Probably not. This
Just,
seems to be
just
an
like
argument as well.
everything else,
Yeah.
they're cutting corners. They're using dead pig virus, and I think from monkeys and stuff like that. I mean, and those things have been tested. There's heavy metals in them. There's mercury, there's barium, there's aluminum, there's all kinds of stuff in these
Sure.
vaccines. And they say that it's a stabilizer.
Yeah, well, the
But
aluminum's not that big a deal, though. People overreact to the aluminum. I agree more with the
Sure,
other stuff,
but why? Why is aluminum in there?
because it helps
Now,
to move it along through the body. That's why.
yes, and it also helps to move those other things through. It
That's
helps
true.
with
That is true.
absorption.
That's true.
That's why whenever they test, like you were talking about chemtrails in a previous show,
Yeah.
there's always aluminum in with the barium and the strontium because the aluminum helps the body to absorb.
That's right. No, that's a fair point.
So,
And I do
and
think
that's why it's in there.
and I think the statement about the difference between our generation and the current generation here, or it was a couple generations later actually, was in our generation, medicine was seen as almost like a holy duty. I mean, it had an air of responsibility around it that was palpable, right? These days,
Absolutely.
it's
We
just
had
corporate.
nurses in school who would draw blood and do all kinds of stuff
That's
like
right.
that.
That's right.
Like
But these
real
days,
licensed nurses.
yeah, it's just corporate, and the fact that you can literally follow the chain of doctors and nurses getting paid money to push drugs on your kids, and I'm not talking about vaccination, they do that too. I'm talking about other kind of drugs too. That is an abomination. And the fact that when you try to ask, hey, where are you getting your money from? Who's paying you? And they get so upset. There was a lady a doctor who came out and was trying to put some light on this, and she was saying, you know what, we as doctors, we should be completely transparent. And they literally threatened bomb threats on her, trying to kill her. This is These are doctors doing this because they don't
Yep.
want you to know where they're getting the money.
I rented commercial space in one of these strip mall shopping centers. Right next door to me was a clinic, a doctor's office. And
Yeah.
you wouldn't believe the supermodel type pharmacy reps that would come in with bags of food from like Outback, and the way they grease these doctors up with gifts and stuff like that. I mean, it's outrageous. Now, this was a guy, he was a Middle Eastern guy, and he was an incredibly, I would say, a doctor with a lot of integrity. But that was
Yeah.
just part of the game with these farm reps rolling up in these luxury cars dressed to the nines. And these girls look like models that would get out, bringing in these huge bags of gifts and then all the
Sure.
samples and stuff like that. And it's such a racket that, like most things, all you have to do is follow the money to find the corruption. There's so much money involved
Yeah.
that
Well,
no one does anything about it. And it's certainly not this government that we have that is a total mess.
no, you're right. And the cleaning of the swamp, whether it's being done or not, it's a much bigger thing than simply that politician. It's super deep. But just recently we had an example of this, the level of the depravity that is involved. Right? What, a year or two ago, we saw those videos came out. I think it was Project Veritas that brought them out. But those videos, they came out with those abortion doctors, right? And they were talking about selling the baby parts and having a good laugh and how much money they made out of it. And this is just one aspect of the medical field, but that's purely disgusting. That's disgusting that you're
Absolutely.
looking at it that way. Now, I'm not sitting here giving you an opinion on whether I agree with abortion or not. That has nothing to do with it. Even if you do get an abortion, it should be an absolutely solemn thing to do. But it's not. How many of these damn women coming up here putting on these stupid shirts? I had an abortion, jumping up, down, smiling, being proud about it. That person deserves a swift kick in the head, right? And I'm not even bringing up whether it's a good thing or not. I'm just saying that is something that should be respected. You're taking a life, right? But they don't. They have no respect for anything. And if they're going to sit there and laugh and joke about that and have fun making all their money off dead babies, what do you think they're doing with just simple drugs and vaccinations, right? I mean, that shows you exactly how deep the depravity is within the medical industry. It's disgusting and it's broken.
One I think would be interesting, and there's probably no way to find out. I would love to find out a case study of physicians and their own children. And I
It's
don't.
I did look into that actually. I tried to, but all I could find was well, it said all. I didn't believe it, but the majority of doctors do vaccinate their children, it seems. But like the real problem with this conversation that I mentioned and Model brought up a page to even show you, which he still got up right here right now, is the fact that you can't find any opposing information on this.
No.
It's really shocking to me. I can go and find information about flat Earth, Obama's birther record. I mean, any kind of nonsense you can imagine. We can go find information on it, right? Sometimes it's hard. It's hard. You go look for 9/11. It's all debunk, 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 debunk. But if you get deep enough down, you will find, oh, here you go. Here's someone giving some information. But this thing is absolutely blacked out, dude. It's absolutely blacked out.
Yeah, and then then you see all these hits that are coming up about some countries that are criminalizing anti-vaxxers
Yes.
and actually charging them. I mean, it's just, yeah. This is another historical event where in some areas of the world it's illegal to even discuss it or to talk about the possible numbers or cases of things that were eventually proven to be untrue. I always go back, if something is so dried or cut and dried and everybody knows it, you don't need laws. You don't need this kind of effort put into it. to hide things, or to make it illegal to talk about, or where you run into this anger, or even I'm surprised you don't have the regular kind of shill crew coming in here that hasn't found this yet, but
Well, I
they
was
could still
clever.
show up.
I was clever. You see,
Yeah, I was.
I've learned. If you look at the title of the show today, it's Anti-Vaxxer. There is
Oh,
no
you
pro or
changed that.
con, right? Yeah.
Oh.
I got smart on them. I got
Yeah,
smart on
I'm
them.
pretty surprised as well. We haven't had anyone go.
Yeah.
"Rah!
Well,
The fat Earth!"
because we're just here having a conversation. Usually we're having a fun and kind of goofing and just enjoying the conversation. Today is far more serious for sure. But I don't want those idiots. This is our conversation between us. We're a bunch of friends here and here having a conversation. So anti-vaxxer doesn't really ring a bell. Matter of fact, most of the stuff it rings is, oh, it's against it. So I don't think the algorithm catches it. I did that intentionally. But let me catch up with the chat real quick because they are involved in this conversation, which is awesome. Ray Thulu says the flu mutates so dang fast, it's almost pointless to vax for it. That's a fair point. By the time the vax is distributed, there's already multiple variants of that strain out in the wild. Yes, true. And a lot of
Yeah,
people.
and you'll never get the same strain twice.
Yeah, yeah, that's why they have to
So
do it every year. And of
yeah.
course, I don't know what the percentage is. Once again, it's hard to find, but there is a percentage of people who get it anyway. It just is what it is. Like I said, the information I could find is vaccinations run the gamut from about 69% up to 97% effective. So that's, on the higher end, that's not bad. On the lower end, that's pretty bad. And I'm kind of thinking the flu is probably leaning toward the lower end because of its adaptability. Let's see. Coffin worked with the Clintons. Yes. Money is more powerful than logic, Jennifer says. And it's true. Monkey kidneys, Matthew Fowler says. I don't know what that means, but rock on. Dang model is blowing my mind. Kenny Kodiak says, awesome. Why are fewer women breastfeeding? Well, that's a good question, Eric. And it really leans into a much bigger conversation, which you probably aren't going to appreciate. And the women here probably will most certainly not appreciate. And I'm going to get yelled at. But it comes down to the entitlement of women these days, I think. Because oh, I don't want to have my breast sag. Oh, it's too much effort. It's too much trouble. You get all kind of this nonsense. It's just like why you see such high divorce rates, right? It's because they want the little baby, but they don't want the man. Now we know this is abominable because if you have a single parent home, it's very, very it's very negative for the child growing up because their
So
chances
tits
of
out, ladies.
well, I'm just saying,
Save us from autism.
statistics are very clear. But I
Well, can I throw another angle in here too?
sure,
We are so conditioned that nothing bad is ever supposed to happen, and disease is meant as a part of natural selection to weed out the weakest
yeah,
among us, and that's why we're getting more sickly. Because as sad as it is for anyone to lose an infant at birth, some aren't meant to survive, or wouldn't survive without this modern influx of medicine and technology that we have. Now, when these infants grow up and then they give birth, they're passing on these weak genes continually. So in the long run, it's not a great thing. Now, if it's some minor thing that is supposed to happen, and you can fix it, fine. I'm not saying let kids die. That's not at all what I'm saying. But nature does have a way of working things
Yes,
out,
yes.
regardless
Don't
of
let
what we
the
do.
kids die. It would just be a shame if they were put to sleep.
booster. It's not helping.
But you know what my point is that we're prolonging bad genetics and keeping it and actually introducing it into the mainstream genetic
Wow,
pool
that's a eugenics
of humanity.
argument.
No, it's not eugenics. It's falsely keeping genetics in the line that wouldn't normally be there. Nature would
Yeah.
have taken care of it.
Model, can you do me a quick favor and switch back over to your icon because that page is locking on you only.
Okay.
But no, I get your point. I understand that. Yeah, but there's a lot of things that are factoring into this, and the breastfeeding one is part of it. Alpha Proto says, as a baby, I was never breastfed. My mother said she only liked me as a friend. All right. Rebel Comics and Gaming. Just a real quick thing, and this is not mean nothing. I don't believe this. I'm just going to throw it out there. Have you guys heard any of the connection between the lack of breastfeeding these days and the increase in homosexuality?
I've not, but I would say that there's it definitely correlates to a lot of different things that are happening, because that's one of the main parts of building a child's immune system.
Oh yeah,
is that breast milk.
very important.
And
Yeah.
and formula and all those other supplements cannot replicate that.
I'm going to get in trouble for that statement. I know I am. I just brought it up.
Well, it's this. You're right. It's this thing that's been pushed as far as feminism on women, that it's going to destroy their breasts, and it's not going to destroy your breasts. And at that point, you should be a mom and you should be in a relationship.
I can verify from personal experience. My wife breastfed 2 children up for a full year, and her breasts are just fine.
Yeah, and most women are. Now, some women's breasts are just going to fall apart with age. It's going to happen.
Yeah, of course.
They're going to be kicking them with their knees.
Alpha Proto says, I read that one. Let's see. Rebel Comics and Gaming says, is this where I get my mogwai? I don't know what that means, but I love mogwai. Let me see here. Why are women not breastfeeding? We're kind of covering that. A swift bullet.
Because
Thundero
women
says.
are awful.
Yikes. Bullet in the head. What is Thundero on about? God, Thundero.
Well, you mentioned about abortions and how he said they need a kick to the head. He said just say bullet to the head.
Well, okay. Yeah.
How do I remember all this? My God.
Well, that's your job. You don't do anything else of value, so I'm glad you're here for that. But no, I mean, I didn't mean to take it to that direction, but it demonstrates the depravity of the medical industry, because if they're willing to be so dismissive and so inhuman about dead babies, then what do you think they're doing on the other side with just drugs and stuff? They truly do not care.
They're lopping off people's testicles and doing mastectomies on all these trans people. They're just butchering people.
They are. They are. And, if you're an adult and you want to go and do that, that's fine. But I do not like what they're doing with the forcing drugs on the kids. And that includes the hormones for the ones who are supposedly homosexual. But Eric Boyd says, model is right. I have been pissed when farm reps would come into the doctor's office and take away time from patients being seen. It hasn't been prevalent now as in the past. Well, like I said, there used to be a certain efficacy to the pharmaceutical industry in the past, and I'm kind of wondering how we got away from that, but we have. Nixie says, "Hi folks, how is TFT going? It's going great." Uncanny Kodiak says, my wife just said that she read that Dr. Oz preaches vaccinate your kids and is famous for not vaccinating his own children. Ooh. That's an interesting little comment.
That's very odd.
That is odd, yeah. Especially because if you look on the internet, you'll find that all doctors vax their kids, all of them. I see the need for vaccines.
200% of doctors.
200%. But do you see what I see? Do you hear what I hear? Well, let me get through this first, and I'll come back to that because I'm really close to the end here. And Thundera, you can get your butt in here if you'd like. He says,
"Look at him typing us up."
I know, dude, he's going crazy. The flu is not really dangerous in the first world. It kills like tens of thousands a year, though, dude, across the world. The stats are massively inflated and conflated with pneumonia and other common hospital diseases. Okay, the old and vulnerable people get it. Oh, while in the hospital and die. Eugenics is a good thing.
He said eugenics is a good thing. Violent force eugenics is not.
Okay, all right, fine. Nick C, who here has not been vaccinated as a kid? Of course, well, all us older kids were, and we didn't have any problem at all. The uncanny Kodiak, my wife breastfed 5 children, and they are nicer now than when she was 18. Lol, I'm going to regret typing that. No, you're not, dude.
Oh,
No,
congrats to your wife's tits. I'm very
yeah,
happy for
dude.
you.
We're very happy for your wife's tits and for you, sir, and for you. Thunder says homosexuality and other sexual deviances are caused by birth defects in utero. Some people are more prone to it than others, and with a cocktail mixes go wrong, you get homosexuals. I think there's a certain truth to that, and I will reference my meaning on that in a second. But I also think it's environmental. They are born that way, but it's not normal. Yeah, well, he's got a very clear point on it. But here's the thing,
Hmm.
though. There's one study out of Trinity College that I think is important to that particular conversation, where this study has been going on for like 3 decades too, is by the way, or more. Basically, they take brand new babies, and they put them on a little table, and they have this little projector above them, one to the right, one to the left, and the one image shows that of a little truck, like a Tonka truck, and the other one shows a smiling motherly face. Now, nearly all, I mean, literally coming to the 97%, which is an interesting number, that 97% of all boys look at the truck and 97% of all girls look at the motherly face. And of course, this correlates to the exact percentage of homosexuality. So, what College did was they wanted to figure out, well, why? Why is that happening? And they did a long study of this. And then not only did they not look at these kids when they were little, they followed them through their life as well, which is important part of the I think for the study. It's an actual study. And what they found out was very, very interesting. It's all about testosterone. Interestingly, it has nothing to do with estrogen at all. It's all about testosterone. If you have when the baby is in the womb, in utero, and the testosterone is lower than it should be, the child will look at the opposite one in that 3% case. So so it comes down to testosterone. So therefore, oddly enough, this study kind of states you can cure homosexuality by testing the mother's testosterone while she's pregnant and making sure the levels are proper.
Hmm.
If
And
it's
there's
lower high, right? Lower high, right, is where it comes into effect. And that's an amazing study. An amazing study. But I also think, and I
Mhm.
have to put this on, and I'll let Model continue with the conversation, but I also think it's environmental. It's not just
But I have
biological.
also have very little testosterone, but I have sucked 0 penises. What is the correlation there, Chester?
Yeah, I don't think your testosterone is low at all.
your day is coming, Booster.
Yeah, it's coming. coming.
Is that a threat?
Go ahead, Model. Go ahead.
Now, there's always been a lot of homosexuality in human culture.
Sure.
There's always been. It's not a problem.
No, it's
Uh,
not.
what is actually the problem is the modern take on it is that where it's trying to be normalized and where it's influencing a lot of people who might not have decided to go that route. I do think there is an element of choice. It really does come down to choice.
Oh, of course,
Uh,
everything is choice, of course. Just because you could be a sociopath, and that's simply, once again, there's no evidence for it, but we know it's real. Where you have no
sure.
emotions is what it means. But
Yeah,
then again,
no
it's only a
empathy and
yeah, no empathy whatsoever, and you kind of have to mimic human emotion. But then again, even though you have those people, the smallest percentage of them become serial killers, which means the rest of them don't. Right? So there's always choice, right? Of course, there's choice. It's an interesting conversation, and I agree with Model. I mean, interesting thing about homosexuality actually is if you look in the lower mammalian forms, right? When homosexuality hits the population, let's say a bunch of rats or things like that, it always comes as a trigger to overpopulation, right? And disease spreads. The other rats get angry and kill the homosexual ones, and there's a big die-off from disease and murder, and then the population is reduced and everything's happy again. But that's in lower mammalian groups, right? When you come into higher groups, like the primates, for instance, you see a very different effect. For instance, chimpanzees, there's homosexuality in that group as well. And what happens in those communities, if you watch them, is the homosexual chimps actually serve a purpose. They are child care givers. They're the ones that are kind of looking after the kids and keeping an eye on them while the mothers take a rest or can't, they can't keep their eye on the babies constantly. So they're kind of like a backup defense for the women, the females, and that's a very interesting study that I've seen into that. And of course, we are a primate. Whether you think we've come from monkeys or not, we're certainly classified as a primate. So why would it be any different with us? And the fact that homosexuality has been so villainized or
monkeys are
so
different.
overly promoted, I think it's caused a break in the cultural balance that it would actually bring.
When I worked in film, it's that industry is loaded down with homosexuals.
Yeah,
and
sure.
nobody cares.
Nobody
Even
cares, yeah.
even to the point where I knew straight men that had wives and kids who would flame when they would go to work because it would help their career.
All right.
So they would act like really, really gay, and then they would go home to their wives. But there's never that animosity. So I think a lot of and this actually I think could be compared with racism as well. I live in the deep South, where we are supposed to be this horribly racist part of the country, and you don't see it. People do not in your daily life when you're out and about. You do not see people treating each other badly. It's so overblown, and a lot of this other stuff is as well. And even going back to our topic here, you're only getting this very vocal minority that is always pushing this stuff.
Mhm.
And right now, because the tech companies seem to all be kind of aligned on this social Marxism agenda,
Yeah.
that's you're seeing the information control. And I just don't think there's that big of a problem out there. There's
No.
People may not know it who are listening. You do not have to vaccinate. There is a form that you have to request. You have to know it's available, because if
Yeah.
you don't, they're going to tell you have to get vaccinated to put your kid into school, but you do not.
No, you don't. Well, it depends on the
Again-
state. Some states are becoming more strict about it, like
Well,
California.
yeah, I think California, but
Yeah.
California is not even the United States. It's not
Well,
America.
yeah, better stay away from there. Yeah, no, those are fair points, well, we're probably asking, well, how are we on anti-vaxxers and now we're on homosexuality? Well, I think it connects, right? It connects in this aspect that we're talking about medical things, right? And we're talking about how the industry looks at it. And we've seen these days where for all of my life, before this modern time, no one cared. No one cared. All of these accounts of people murdering homosexuals, I'm sure it happened occasionally, but I'd never seen it, and I certainly never heard of it. No one cares. No one ever cares.
You get into places like Iraq and stuff like that, and they're throwing gays off buildings and stuff. It
Well,
definitely
that's not
happens.
us, though.
Yeah.
That's
And in
not
the
us.
So
70s
many. We've
talking
killed
about
very
us.
few
In-
gays.
in the
I
70s
personally
and
hardly
80s,
killed any gays.
there were isolated incidents of gay bashing and stuff like that, but it became overblown to something that it's really not. There's cases of that have to do with other issues as well. Something sets off an argument. There's a violent confrontation, and you know what? Like when you see people engaging with each other on Twitter, and let's say someone makes someone angry about an issue, whatever that may be, those two clash. And then it always ends up where you start digging and you see that someone's slightly overweight. So you end it with, "You fat bastard." And then that is taken to, "Oh, you hate fat people." Well, no,
Right,
not
right.
really.
No,
Well,
just you and your
just
fat.
you, yeah, and your fatness. But yeah, no, no. Let me make my connection back to anti-vaxxer, because it comes down to agenda, right? No one cared, no one talked about it. It wasn't even a subject. We all had gay friends or had gay people around you. Maybe you didn't even know it. No one cared. But now, when they make it an agenda and they push it on you, and now there you have to now we have to make rules about what you can say, what you can't say, where you can go, where you can't go, where they can go, and where they can't go, etc., etc. This is when you piss people off, right? It's the same thing with the anti-vaxxers. You're coming in and they're saying, "Well, hold on a sec, we got a question." And instead of just answering their question, normally and diplomatically, just with some human friendship, they like, "You idiot." And then they start saying, "We need to get rid of these people. We need to block them on the internet," which they've done. "We need to do all these things." This is when you piss people off and they stand up and say, "Nope, you're creating the problem. You're creating the problem." And it's the same
Well,
thing with the
in the
gays because no one
medical
cared,
field,
dude. And now everyone
no,
seems to care.
nobody does. And
Yeah.
and this goes on in the medical field as well, where it goes to genders, to races. If all of this cultural Marxism that's getting just slammed on everybody, that there's no difference between anybody. Well, ask a doctor who's honest, and you better hope that they know the difference, whether you're black or you're white or you're male or you're female, and how they
Right.
treat you, or you're going to have problems. There are even diseases that are predominantly among Jewish genetic lines,
Sure.
black genetic lines, like sickle cell and some of the other things like that. Like Jewish people are more likely to have like things like Crohn's and intestinal
Yeah.
problems like that. And that, you better hope your doctor really, he may say there's no difference, but you better hope he knows that there is a
Yeah.
difference in
Well,
how he treats you.
and that brings us to another problem, right? Because this is another layer of this issue when we're talking about medical things. Because doctors are afraid to speak openly about your body, right? Because they will get people jumping up and down on a potential, frivolous lawsuits and things like that. Because we are different. Not only are we different between our genders, we're different between our races, and we're different from one person to the next as well. I mean, if you wanted to make the best vaccine, you need to take a little blood from that person, and you need to make sure that you make the vaccine perfectly to their genetic map, right? Which we can do.
Mhm.
It's just expensive, and they don't want to spend that money because they want to make as much money. They don't want to cut their profits, and so it's a nonsense thing. But doctors are afraid, so they don't even talk about these things. You do realize until literally what, a year or two ago, transgenderism was considered a mental illness, right? Because it is.
Mm.
It's an
It's
extreme
a
form
it's
of
a deviancy.
it's a
Yeah.
deviancy, and but now they can't even classify it as that. Even though nothing has changed, the evidence hasn't changed. There's no studies that prove otherwise, but they won't because they're afraid, right? And this is kind of the problems. The doctors, it's not just arrogance and money; it's also fear, and
Well, sure. Now look at something like deaths from firearms. You have this group of people who are perfectly fine with suing a gun company. They're fine with suing Remington for manufacturing a firearm because it was used to kill somebody. But the gun death from firearms are a fraction of just the people who die from seasonal flu. It's a minute fraction.
Oh yeah.
But you
You
can't.
see this what Fundara said earlier. He
But
said
these people will say that well, no, you can't sue a pharmaceutical company, even though deaths from pharmaceuticals are massive in numbers on a yearly basis. So why?
Yeah. And
Why
and of
can't you
course,
sue?
you know,
Why can't
keep
you sue them?
yeah, right. But also keep in mind with this though, dude, that when you're talking about those kind of death numbers, right? Well, with violent gun use, they don't ever talk about the fact that there's literally thousands, or if not thousands, I don't know the exact number, but it's huge number of people saved by a gun. It's
Well, yeah,
way
and that's not
outweighs
really
that.
the point. You could say alcohol, hundreds of thousands of deaths directly attributed to alcohol every year, but you never hear about. Everybody likes their booze. That's what it comes down to,
Yeah.
and that includes the politicians. They don't want to give up their booze, so you have a liquor store at every corner. And alcohol is far more destructive on a society than firearms.
Oh, sure. Booster, go ahead and read
You're not even
Thundero's statement.
approaching the numbers.
No, it's true. Yeah, go ahead.
There's something about this with the big gay. He says if we can prove it as a birth defect, there is simply zero reason to allow it to continue. It means it's evolutionarily pointless. That's why scientists are terrified of studying this.
Well, I don't know if I agree with that though, because
Hmm.
I guess if you
Is
ask
it
us
just pointless? I suppose evolutionarily pointless, I guess, but it doesn't mean we shouldn't allow them to exist. I don't know.
I don't know. But I get his point though. Like I said, there's been a lot of studies done in the lower primates, and it's found that they serve a purpose within the community. Actually, I don't know if we have to apply that or not, but that's a tough one because I don't really have a problem with gays, so I don't really care. But I don't know. But let's ask this simple question, I guess. And once again, this is a candid, open conversation, right? Which no one seems to want to have these days. I don't know why we can't have a debate about everything. But let's ask a simple question. If I pose the question that if everyone, let's say 100 years from now, 200 years from now, everyone on the planet, man, woman, and child, were all gay, is that better for humanity or not?
Well, it's the end of humanity, obviously.
It would be, right? So I don't know though. I get his point. I get his point, but it is an extreme stance. But then again, you're
Humanity is
talking.
overrated.
Yeah, but then again, if it's something that is taken care of before you get the child is born, well, then you're not really. It's not really anti-homosexual, is it? It's just simply a preventative medicine. But that's an interesting comment. It's a touchy one too. Let me see here. Let me catch up real quick. You guys have so many opinions here. Curious 2A says Bill Gates has said several times that if we do a good job with vaccines, we can lower population growth. How does that work? Well, Bill Gates is well known for wanting to reduce the number of people on Earth. Wonderful. Thundero says in utero, the baby's test gets messed up by some mysterious birth defect, and it can be cured. Yeah, it's just simply a matter of the mother's testosterone levels. Chester, I'm dying laughing. Oh, I'm glad. Where are we here? The thing popped on me again. Let's come down here. I'm just tired of seeing softcore gay porn and everything. Okay, that's true. Jennifer says we are discussing
I am the gay porn.
you are the gay porn. Medical experimenting on our children. Yeah, that's a fair point right there. Nick says YouTube bot incoming. It's probably been here a long time already, guys. And seeing as we've dropped half of our audience, it makes me wonder why.
Yeah. The live stream paused for a second. I had to refresh to keep watching, and it seems some people just assumed it stopped. Yeah. And a lot of people are saying the same thing. Interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
It could be a hiccup on your side of YouTube, or maybe
thank you,
they're
Thundero,
trying something.
Thank you for giving
Fundamentally,
me that.
I think this always it goes back to a kind of a natural right. You know, we talk about people have rights, but you do have a natural right to your body and to make your own decisions. If you want to put something horrible into it, you can. If you want to take very good care of it, you can. If you want to put metal hoops and rings and cover it in tattoos, you can.
Yeah.
That when this stuff
I
starts
won't hire your ass though.
When it starts being mandated by law, you're getting into a territory which is leading us into a lot of the things that we're seeing now as a society. And we got a little bit off of the vaccines, but you know, I do see the relationship as far as culturally where we're headed.
Yeah, no, it's all
these things, and a lot of this stuff is being mandated at the barrel of a gun. It's important to understand that.
Very good point. Very good point. Yeah.
It's not like they're just strongly advising you to do so.
And you know, I just want to cover this point if I can real quick with Thundero. Thank you for checking this for me, dude. 500,000 to 3 million crimes are stopped by private gun ownership. And this is way beyond any kind of shootings we have in America, even though they're horrible. I agree. We all agree. But the thing with that I've seen happening with guns, which is really interesting to me, is when I was young, it was almost impossible to get a concealed carry gun, pretty much, you know, anywhere outside of the South. right? And even there, it was very restricted. I mean, you had to basically be a woman someone who was raped or something to get a conceal permit when I was young. Now there were some places in America where you can open carry, and they've been around for forever. But what I've seen since I was young until now, however, is that not only has open carry become more common all across America, we've also seen concealed carry become much more common and very easy to get in most places. Not all, but most places. We've also seen the law that came out here this year, or was it last year? Wasn't that long ago, which basically forces all states to recognize a permit from another state, which they weren't doing before. So it's very curious to me that gun ownership, the ability to carry guns, is far more open and allowed today than even when I was young. And of course the interesting thing is they've always been talking about guns, of course, the Brady Act. I remember when I was younger, but there's far more push against guns now than I've ever seen before. But yet it is the most positive environment to ever own a gun in. How ironic is that? Anyway.
Yeah, well, it just makes sense. I'm just reading here. Thundaro. That's the stat I have. Influenza killed about 80,000 people in the 2017 to 2018 season.
Yeah, no, it does. But that's coming out of
So,
third
but
world
he
countries
said
mainly, right?
it was a little more than 1,000, and I think that 1,000 is pretty low.
He might be talking in America though, where you might be talking globally.
Well, regardless, I mean, this is a global issue, I think.
I think it is, yeah. But then now let's bring that up since we're on the subject of it, because I live in Japan. You guys all know that, and you can all mock me now for saying it. Go ahead, go ahead. But here in Japan,
Oh, me from Japan. I am Chester-san.
things are handled
Is
very
that what you wanted
differently,
me?
right? Because we don't have these conversations here at all. And you know why? Because big pharma does not play in Japan like it does in the West. You are given the medicines you need specifically. Doctors are not allowed to take payment from those kind of things. It's not discouraged. It's illegal, right? So therefore, when you go to a doctor here, you only get the medicine that is necessary. Now, you can make the argument that because there is a socialized medicine here in Japan, which there is, you don't get the absolute cutting, bleeding edge type of technology. It's true, you don't. But it's pretty close. But the thing is, you don't ever get, given medicines or stuff like that that won't or that aren't there that actually help you, because they have eliminated this type of backroom payment type of thing in Japan. It's completely eliminated. And look at the system here, how well it works. Because Japan has one of the best medical care systems in the world, actually. And it's kind of funny to me when I see so many people talking about, and they go into Europe and Britain and then France and Canada, and it's like you do realize the best example of what you're trying to say is right over in Asia, right? And it was a simple little thing for them because there was a problem with it. So they put a bill in place that removed it. And that would be the simplest solution in America and the West as well. Just go in there and say, you as a doctor cannot take money from a pharmaceutical company, period.
Yeah, I'm not sure what Thundaro is reading, but I'm looking at CDC site, and here's another one. It says U.S. flu still elevated but dropping, deaths as high as 57,000. So I don't know what this, I don't know what this discrepancy is. That's definitely worth looking into. But this is numbers from the CDC, and it's way over 1,000.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, that there seems to be conflicting information, but it doesn't surprise me though. I mean, because the CDC, I'm sure they do a good job in many ways, but they're also become kind of a hack organization in some ways as well.
Well, definitely very politically motivated.
Yeah. Oh, I see. Thundero is saying the CDC is wrong. He's saying he has other information. Oh, okay. Well, that's a fair point as well, because they're they're very political. They're part of the agenda without question. And he's clicking on a link. Let me click on the link.
Yeah, let's take a look at it, because that's interesting.
Yeah.
Let's look at it. Let's see it. I want to see it. The articles would buttress it.
And it would not surprise me at all if the CDC was not inflating numbers anyways on everything, because it is a politically motivated
They
organization
are.
that
They are.
requires tax money to keep going and keep operating. And
Well, and they're also this has been proven a long time ago. They're completely in the pocket of big pharma as well.
oh, he's clicking on a Lou Rockwell. Well, Thundaro, I think you do have to I think you have to factor in Lou Rockwell as well. I'm not questioning his integrity, but he is also a very, let's say, biased.
This is from Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
Yeah.
And he's definitely part of the
I'm not
anti-vaxxer
really
movement.
I'm not gonna listen too much to the Kennedys, but that's my own bias.
Sure. No, I get that. And basically, what this article is saying, as I'm kind of skimming through here real quickly, is it's accusing the CDC of overstating influenza deaths. And Model told you why already, and that the actual death from influenza is much lower. Well, you would think a little more than 1,000 a year. You would think actually influenza would be pretty low as a death in the West. I mean, if we're talking like Africa or India or some kind of third world country or even a second world country, you would expect it to be a little higher because they don't have as best the level of access that we do. So 80,000 seems extreme to me. But I don't know. Maybe the truth is somewhere in between, as it always tends to be. How
Yeah,
ironic is that?
to be honest, nothing would surprise me. I mean, when you get into these government agencies, there's so much corruption and so much book cooking that's being done as far as how much money is needed to operate, where the money is going. It's such an out of control monster that has taken over every level of bureaucracy in this country.
Yeah, and as you see through this conversation, we've been an hour and a half, so we're gonna wrap it up, because we said what needs to be said on the subject. But as you saw from the very first thing I said today, this one goes deep, and I think it has less to do with vaccinations than it does with the overall problem in the government and the agenda that's being pushed, which is always about profit. Don't you listen to all these Republicans or Democrats or Hollywood celebs or whatever side they're on, because when it comes right down to it, it's always about money. Now, the good thing about the Republicans is they will admit that straight out, right? They don't hide behind it. And they understand that, hey, the richer you are, the richer I get. Right? The Democrats, they like to be a little bit more obfuscated in what they do. But when they get up here and they say, oh, you got to do this and we have to stand up for human rights and yada, yada, and they out, and then look at how they treat China. An absolutely horrible, monstrous communist government that literally has slavery going on as we speak. Right? So they're full of it. It's all about money. And it's much bigger than simply whether you vaccinate your child or not. Now, me personally, I say this. I would rather side with liberty than anything else. And you should have the choice, as Model had said as well, to make those decisions yourself. If you want to vaccinate your children, vaccinate your children. If you don't want to vaccinate your children, don't vaccinate your children. And if you pay for that in the long run, or more importantly, your child pays for that in the long run, well, that was your choice, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's the end of this conversation, as far as I'm
I
concerned.
think we need to bring a lot of the old West back into our society. All this stuff that goes on with regulation and licensing, and if you want to go out there and open up a hot dog stand and you end up making 100 people sick, they might come back and whoop your ass. And that's if we allow a little bit of that to come back in. Maybe you say, okay, I don't want to take this vaccination. Your kid gets really sick and gets a bunch of people sick. Then it's going to be on you.
Ooh, lynch mob justice. Oof.
Hey, that's part of
fight for liberty.
Those things used to keep society straight.
Yeah, Booster. Yeah, no, I get what you're saying. If you have to take responsibility for what you say and do, well, damn it, you're going to take responsibility, because otherwise you're going to have to deal with the consequences. And this is kind of the problem. I agree. We haven't. The government has taken a lot of responsibility away from a certain choice group of people. We know right well that in pretty much every country on the planet, let me go as far as making the statement of all countries on the planet. There are two sets of justice systems. There's one for the elite, and
Absolutely.
there's one for the rest of us. That's where, and the further you get away from that, the deeper you get into that, the more you piss off your population. And that's where we see right now. We see a very pissed off population in the West. And they keep saying, well, nationalism is growing. Well, you did it. That's on you. You're the one
Good
that's
job.
bringing back nationalism.
You know, if one of these companies makes a vaccination that causes a bunch of kids to die, they shouldn't be surprised if the people in the town all show up at night and burn that place to the ground,
Right.
or
And
they drag the CEO out of his office and beat him to death in the street. That would sort a lot of this stuff out. I don't think you're going to see like things going crazy and all of a sudden being mass chaos.
mhm,
But if there was that fear, if the police were serving the people that are paying their salary and not acting as a private security force for politicians, for judges, for CEOs of companies, and actually doing their constitutional duty, things might straighten themselves out a little bit. So I always go
yeah.
back and say, please, everybody, just become a constitutional Republican. Forget Republican. It's not going to make you a conservative. This conservative liberal stuff is
It is
nonsense.
nonsense. It is because it does, and even Ronald Reagan said this, and I agree 100% with him. Conservatism and liberalism are not a right to left thing; they're up and down thing. It starts at conservatism. You know why? Because conservatives are frickin' conservative. They're not extreme. And what is alt right? Explain to me what this means. If you have someone who is extremely right, well, they're not conservative, are they? Because they're extreme. It's such a silly, silly thing. And if any of you guys go in that comments down below and say, Chester, lynching is a tool of racism, bite me. More white people have been lynched in the history, far more white people than blacks. Yeah, all right, so bite me twice. It just pisses me off, especially about this alt-right thing. It doesn't even make sense. If you're a person who is hating racially or you're whatever the point's supposed to be, you're not a conservative. You're some manner of liberal.
All of these clowns in Washington, D.C., they put up a good act like they're opposed to each other on TV, and then they all go hang out at parties at night and drink together.
And
It's
other
a it's a
things.
it's a big farce that's being
Yeah.
it's the illusion of choice, and
Mhm.
you're being played.
Yes, and they take little boys like Booster and they play with them.
Yeah.
I don't like the games they play, Chester.
That's not what you said off air. That's not what you said. You
Show,
said loved
show,
it.
show Chester on the
Yeah.
Denali doll.
Oh
I'm
no,
naughty.
on the Dinale doll.
Oh,
I don't know.
Denali Llama is coming soon to a store near you.
Frankenstein was the villain. Yes, not the monster. That's a very good point, Thundero.
Oh my god, that's actually totally marketable. The Denali Llama. Little llama doll with glasses.
Oh, it is marketable. Let's see. I'd like the games that they play, Chester. Booster 2019. All right. Okay, here we go. But anyway, we've covered this pretty well. I think we could continue going on, but we're just going to get further and further tangented away from the original conversation for sure. But thank you for coming on, Model. I do apologize for basically twisting your arm and dragging you in here. Your insight is important, I think. And keep in mind, guys, any of you want to jump on here and have any conversation with us on any show, we'd love to have you. Just
be
hit me up
shy.
on my
We're not
Twitter.
too
Don't be
mean.
shy, right? Come in here and have your opinion said. We don't care what your opinion is. This is a place where you can actually have a debate. We don't
This is a
care.
safe
Now,
space.
it's a safe space in a way, right? In a way. Now,
I mean,
YouTube might care.
Chester might condescend you a little, but yeah.
Oh, that's guaranteed.
Yeah.
No, I'm actually pretty nice. I'm nice now. Come on. I only said bite me twice on this show, 3 times now.
You're kind of a dickhead.
A little bit. But that doesn't mean I'm wrong. It doesn't mean I'm wrong.
Well, like many things, I think ultimately the integrity of the source is important to all these issues. If you could have confidence in your pharmaceutical companies not cutting corners for money, you don't have to worry about the vaccinations. I think there was definitely a time, maybe 2 or 3 decades ago, where you didn't have to worry about that as much. You didn't have to worry that your media was just constantly lying to you.
Yeah.
or your politicians. There was a certain amount of ethics that was expected and just kind of unspoken that helped to keep society tight. You don't have that anymore. I don't understand how we can have news stations and channels and journalism where there's not an enforced ethic that you're at least expected to try to tell the truth, or
Yeah.
politicians and law enforcement, how there's no ethics violation for lying.
There should
And
absolutely be a punishment.
it's promoted
It
to
is.
them. It's encouraged to lie and deceive. And that is really that there's so many issues that can go into academia. It can go into NASA. You wouldn't have all these problems going on right now with conspiracy theories and different groups branching off and extremists here and extremists there if there was confidence in the foundation of these organizations. And there is none anymore. And there's been too much that's happened, especially in the past 20 years, that has shown people that they shouldn't have faith in these organizations.
Well, the big shift I've seen as far as that goes is this. When I was younger, you would certainly see political opinions. You would see people bending the truth. You would see the lie of omission. You would see plenty of this. And you could see the agenda quite clearly, but in essence, the truth was kind of there. These days, they don't even bother with any of that decorum, I would call it. They
No.
just simply lie. They just make it up, right? That's where we've come to. That's where we've come to. And I think a perfect extreme example of this is what's going on with the impeachments of Trump. It's nonsense. He's not guilty of anything whatsoever, other than being an ass. And that's really what it comes down to. But they don't care. They could care less.
And he
what
was
you think.
elected to be an ass,
He
so
was
that's
elected to be an ass.
not a problem with most of the electorate that
That's
put
right.
him in there.
That's right. And he's been very
But from
successful at his
from
assholery.
what I've seen from him, he's a bit of a bullshit artist.
Oh yeah.
But I don't think he's a liar.
No, he's
I
actually
think
too
he's-
honest. That's kind of the problem.
Yeah.
Actually, he's too honest when it comes down to it. Now, he might do the lie of exaggeration, whereas the fish was 12 inches instead of in fact it was only 4. He does
Sure.
that all the time. But when it
Yes.
comes
Me
down
too.
to
I make that same lie.
I know you do, but it's about your penis. It's a very different thing. But when it comes right down to it, he's brutally honest about the things that need to be honest about, and this is what really pisses him off. Because he's talking about
And
things
I'm
he
not a
should not be
Trump
talking
fan
about.
either. For anyone listening, I'm not a fan of his performance and what he's done. I think he's really screwed up. For one thing, he knows. I'll lead us off somewhere else. He knows that 9/11 is fishy. He even talked about it at length, and that was one thing when he got elected. I was like, maybe this guy is actually going to go out and push.
No, yeah.
But he's not done any of those things.
There's a lot
And
of things he hasn't
that's a real
touched.
disappointment to me.
You're right. Yeah, I agree 100% with that. And it's simply him being in a position where I guess it comes down to this model. What battles do you fight? What is the worthy battle of fighting? And I think the battles he's trying to fight are purely economic. He's trying to shift the culture of Washington to be one that's more honest and litigious. He's trying to shift the world governments to away from because some people look at it, he's just being mean. But you got to understand, after World War II, America rebuilt this planet. Now, no one wants to talk about that. They get angsty when you bring up the conversation, but we did. America rebuilt the planet, and for a long, long time, decades upon decades, we have supported many of these economies around the world, particularly Germany and Japan. And because of our support and the free market that was allowed to reign inside those governments, they became absolutely affluent, right? But now we've come to the point where Trump is saying, all right, well, we did that for a long time. We helped them build up. Now we need to stop doing that and bring things back to the fact that we're a country, you're a country, you're a country over there, and we're going to all treat each other equally. That's what he's trying to do, I think.
Oh, that's crazy, man.
Am I wrong?
I wasn't listening.
No, I don't think you're wrong. I think it's important, especially for other countries, that you're talking about. The labor of the American people has done this. So
Yes.
it's not our government. Our government sucks. So if people want to say America sucks, I totally get that. But the American people don't suck. The
No.
American people are actually so generous. They've given their lives of their children for 100 years for places all over the world. Now, whether that's misled or for the wrong reasons, that's not the fault of the American people. It's not the guy getting up and going to work every day, or the woman getting up and going to work, or sending her kids to die and get blown up somewhere. So we have a serious problem in our country where our government has grown into this behemoth that is so out of control, and it is not responsible for any of its actions. It's not
Yeah.
being held
Yeah.
for anything that it does. And it's so big and it's so vast. I used to think that it could be fixed, but I don't think it can be fixed anymore. Not without a major happening.
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking about violent, bloody civil conflict. I don't think anything changes. And even if that happens, the people responsible for it are going to be on planes and
That's
going to
true.
their
Yeah.
islands
Fair
the,
point.
the
Fair
minute
point.
and
Well,
waiting for it to die down so they can come back and start again.
yeah. Well, keeping that in mind, there's another point to add to what you said. We talk about the American people have done this over so many decades, which is true. But do keep in mind, America is everybody. We have every type of person, every type of creed, every type of religion, every type of culture. It lives in America. We are the hub of the planet. We are everyone. We are the world.
Yeah,
You
so
know, and
stop
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 singing Michael
coming here and
Jackson.
trying to make it a shithole like the one you came from.
Right.
Please.
Right. And it's very rare that that used to happen because a lot of people came here desperate for the opportunity. And what we're seeing with this mass immigration that a lot of those people coming in are not. They're actually, especially the ones from south of the border, they're basically looking at getting some money and taking it back home with them. They're not here for America, right?
Well,
And
in Somalians and all this African migration too
yeah,
is destroying communities. Minneapolis is destroyed. They call it Little Mogadishu now. It's destroyed.
yeah.
And I,
Um,
I grew up in northern Minnesota, and that was a beautiful place to grow up with, but it's just as messed up as everywhere else now.
yeah,
But you
it's
know what
unfortunate.
drops tomorrow, Chester?
Hmm?
You know what drops tomorrow?
No.
The IG report.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that of course they're going to discredit that immediately, but yeah, that is going to be a big happening, I think. But and probably will end up covering in some way or another. But do keep in mind, there's one other comment I do want to make that I think is important to the conversation. Um, Another thing that America does is that a lot of the costs of experimentation and for across all fields, by the way, but particularly in pharmaceutical, the cost of making new medicines is bore by the American people. And the people who come from other countries, you are in essence taking advantage of the sweat and expense and pocket expense of the Americans with your medicines. You do not have to pay for the research. You do not have to pay for these anything. You're just getting the end result. Now, I'm not defending the pharmaceutical companies. I clearly showed you what I thought about them here in this conversation, but this is a point that must come in. There are huge expenses. We're millions of dollars, billions in some cases, that is being borne by these companies and the American people, not by everybody else in the world who simply benefit from it. This is something that needs to be
Absolutely.
kept
For
in
all the
mind.
people that are getting these free medicines and
Yeah,
vaccines, that's why the people here I have to pay for it, why I have to pay so much for
yeah,
it.
yeah. Yeah, and once again, like here in Japan, one of the reasons they can make medicines so cheap is because they're making a generic version of the thing that America created. That's why. And that's the reality of it, and you can't take that out of the conversation. Is this situation forcing the pharmaceutical companies to try to make regain as much profit as possible, and then you get the suits involved who want to penny pinch everything, and it makes it worse, et cetera, et cetera. Could that be part of the conversation too? It might well be.
Absolutely. The corruption in the FDA and the whole process for approving these drugs and the kickbacks that go to all the lobbyists and politicians. Yeah, every segment of the system in this country is just screwed.
Mm, yeah. We've definitely way past our time. We
And
need to get out of
Thundaro
here
is right. He said, "Stop coming here, period. We're full. We are full.
in a way.
Before we don't have a patch of grass and everything is covered in asphalt. We're
Well,
full."
Well, you do realize we had huge amounts of immigration at several times in our history, and then after those big immigration moments, we would have a point where we basically closed the country so everything could assimilate. Right? We haven't done that in a long time. We really need to. We need to shut it down, let it assimilate, and then open it up later.
Well,
Um,
it's one political party that's growing their base.
it's the
That's where that
Democrats.
immigrant. Yeah.
Most of our problems right now are coming from the Democrats. And then I know some of you are going to say, well, the Republicans have done bad stuff too. No, the Republicans are just greedy and they're honest about it. And really, when it comes right down to it, if you look at all the major problems and major things that have happened in American history, it always comes down to the damn liberals. It always does. You want to, who
Well,
created,
and there's a segment right now that is in power, and they're Bolshevik communists. So go read about the Bolshevik Revolution in the early 1900s in Russia,
Hmm.
and see if you don't find parallels to what's going on right now. And
Oh, you do.
if Trump doesn't get reelected, or when he does finally leave office, if some things aren't sorted out, they're going to have revenge on us. I'm telling you, they're going to punish us
Yeah.
in this country.
Yeah, no, and this conversation is starting to really lean more and more toward the people's response if things do go south. I kind of think, I don't know. Do you remember? I'm going on another damn tangent. You remember a few years ago where there was a lot of stink about the UN bringing troops into America, and they were bringing specifically in Russian troops, and there was a lot of stink about that because, like, what are you doing? You got to come in here try to force us to do something? What are you doing? Then all of a sudden that conversation disappeared. I mean, really disappeared, right? Well, what happened to those forces? Are they still here, or are they not? I mean,
Sure. There's Islamic training grounds in states across the country.
yeah, that's true.
They shut one down here in Georgia like 6 months ago.
And it
It,
also,
it's there's a
it's
UN facility in Utah right now that
yeah,
they are calling it international land. That the laws of America and the Constitution do not apply to that
yeah,
facility.
yeah.
Now, I advocate for 10,000 men to get up tomorrow and go and burn that place down and execute every last one of those people.
Ooh, we are definitely getting a copyright strike.
No,
Um,
it's outrageous, and unless some people at some point here are willing to stand up, you're just going to leave a nightmarish hellscape for your kids and your family that have to
yeah,
continue to go through it. Because if you look back to like the 80s and maybe up to about 1994, everything changed after that, and
yeah,
the progression of how fast it's gone downhill in that 20 years is it's incredible
yeah.
at what's happened.
Well,
9/11 was the linchpin.
Well, look how extreme it's gotten. It's gotten to the point that a nice, mild-mannered boy like Model is calling for armed response.
I'm ready for the boogaloo. I'm
Yeah.
ready,
Well,
The big igloo is coming, boys.
keep in
and
mind that
I can knock the balls off a gnat too.
there
I'm
you go.
telling you.
Uh, now, what was that place in the Midwest that's sitting on that continental raise that's in the center of the country? I can't remember which state it is. But there's a lot of underground storage areas and government. They actually have the secondary White Houses over there. These are not conspiracy theories; just is what it is.
Are you talking about Colorado
No, it's not Colorado. Uh,
or,
but
Wyoming?
No, I can't remember the name of it. But anyway, that's not as important as the point I'm about to make. Do keep in mind, several years ago, there were literally millions and millions and millions of gun rounds put in storage there by the government. And then people started
Oh
asking
yeah.
why, and then Obama shut down the conversation.
And that's what artificially inflated the price of ammunition, was because the government bought everything coming out of production.
Yeah, well, they've done that also to try to dissuade gun owners, and all it's done is just have them rebudget their personal economy. But
Yeah, it makes the value of what you have go up. It's fantastic.
yeah, it's odd how things backfire on them. Thunder says one side, neolibs, are Bolsheviks, globalists. The other side, neocons, are Trotsky globalists. That's very true. It's why they always agree on more government and public and private welfare and stripping our rights. Well, once again, it brings it back to the point I was trying to make. Conservatism, without any political party being put on top of it, is not extremism. And all these people, whether they call themselves a Republican or not, are not conservative, right? There's a clear thing. And the neocon or the rhino is a real deal. Matter of fact, we had a president recently that was one of those, and his name was George W. Bush. Now, that's a rhino if I've ever seen one, right?
Yep.
He acted like a Democrat the entire time he was in office, right? Anyway, we have to finish it, model. Stop it.
Yeah, absolutely. And for everybody now, we're going into a new political season. Just remember, American politics is WWE wrestling. It doesn't matter who you vote for. Both teams are going to get rich, and ultimately Vince McMahon is also going to get very rich. So don't think you have this choice. You don't, because what Thundaro said is right on point. There's those two teams have the same goal. They've just each taken up a different method to get there, and they're both covering every bit of ground on the way to that center point. So don't get played.
Don't get played. Fair point. Okay.
Namaste.
Namaste. Namaste. I was going to make a namaste. It's the first time I was ever going to do it, but he just out namasta'd me, so I'm not going to do it. So,
yeah,
namaste.
you lose.
All right, guys. Thank you very much. Do keep in mind that tomorrow is our D&D night. We're going to be doing Moonshayal, so please come back and check that out. 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. No, I'm wrong. Tomorrow is the California show, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I apologize. And definitely come back and check that out. I'm not sure what our TFT will be next week, but I'm sure it will be less controversial than this one.
Dinosaurs.
Dinosaurs. There you go. I know what. Yeah, we do know what we're doing next week. It is dinosaurs and the conspiracy theory around them. Now that's gonna be fun, dude. That's a fun conversation because Model is going to take the side of the, I'm assuming, the no dinosaur existence side.
Yes.
And dude, does he have a bunch of information to feed on? It's shocking. It's shocking. So come on back and watch that. That'll be a lot of fun. Check out our other shows, and we do appreciate you guys. We love you coming in here and being part of the conversation and showing your opinions. And do keep in mind, everyone is welcome here. We do not care what your opinion is. You are welcome because you know what? We're a bunch of adults. We can actually have a conversation. Later.
Good night.